debate. The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an honour to stand today to speak to a very important bill, but that is not adequate.
The traditional territory of the Algonquin peoples, unceded. We're on their land, Meegwetch. Look, this bill, Bill C-31, represents two parts that attempt to help Canadians when times are tough. Part one deals with dental care and an interim dental benefit. Part two deals with rental housing and a one-time only payment to help low-income renters. It's hard to be against anything in this bill, Mr. Speaker. I want to approach the two parts, I hope, in equal measure in the time I have available. First of all, a dental benefit is something that no Green Party member of Parliament could be against. We were the first party to propose that dental care be brought into our public health care system. It was a central feature of our platform in 2015. We got it costed by the Parliamentary Budget Office, and it's an enormous cost, and we recognize that we would start, just as the government has done now, with dental assistance for children under 12 and move forward to take on more. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in this area, particularly because dentists as a profession are not keen on moving in this direction, the ones I've spoken with at least. But we know that dental care is an essential part of health care. Without adequate dental care, other illnesses can occur, other diseases can occur, and it really does create a poor start in life when our children can't get access to routine dental care. So I fully support Bill C-31's interim first step at dental care. It's, again, a baby step, but it's better than nothing, and it does fulfill, as we understand it, the confidence and supply agreement between the New Democrats and the federal Liberals. But I know my constituents are asking the question, with health care a crisis in this country, is this really the top-of-mind thing that we should be addressing? We know, and certainly in my community, many people do not have a family doctor. Many places across this country are having to see emergency services cut back, emergency wards closed some of the days, ambulance services less available. We are facing a significant public health crisis, and this bill, while focusing significant resources on dental care for children under 12, doesn't speak to the things that my constituents are most alarmed about. So I just wanted to flag that. I'm sure the Honourable Minister for Health is well aware that the healthcare system in this country is in crisis. It's practically in free fall. And it's not just a matter of money, with all due respect to my colleagues who say it's all about transfer payments. The province of British Columbia, which is where I live, has received transfer payment increases, but the quality of care hasn't increased with those payments. One of the local doctors in my riding put to me that what they want to see is measurable improvements in what they've termed, which I think is brilliant, the bed-to-bureaucrat ratio. Because they've seen money come in, and then talking to healthcare professionals, the layers between where someone's doing the work as a frontline healthcare worker and the number of bosses and layers of bureaucracy between that healthcare worker and the decision maker expands in layers, but healthcare doesn't get easier. One of my friends, who is a wonderful community nurse on Salt Spring Island, was telling me about going to visit a home where somebody needed help to get a vaccination for COVID. They couldn't come into the clinic. Two nurses have to go out. One nurse does the vaccination, and the other nurse spends the time trying to handle all the paperwork that's required. She's with the other nurse, two nurses in the same house, and most of the work and most of the stress is the nurse who has to fill out the paperwork. We really need an emergency meeting of the Federal Minister of Health with all provincial colleagues to look at healthcare and listen to doctors, listen to nurses, and fundamentally rethink what we're doing in healthcare. It must remain public. It must remain single payer. We must not allow the emergency of the moment to allow any further, because it's not like it's new. We're seeing privatization creep into our public healthcare system, and that is an enormous risk. I will emphasize the risk for Canada versus a country like the UK in two-tier systems. Canada's deal with the United States was NAFTA, now CUSMA, means that health care in Canada is a market. It's not just about taking care of people. And the enormously, obscenely wealthy health insurance industry in the U.S. that provides a lesser quality of health care than what we get in Canada looks north of the border. The more we allow privatization, the greater risk that we'll lose our public single-payer health care system. Turning to the second part of Bill C-31, which of course deals with rental accommodations, and again, a welcome short-term $500 benefit for rent paid on a principal residence in 2022. It's a Band-Aid. Let's look at a real solution, and that I want to compliment and thank my honorable colleague from Kitchener Centre, who has placed before us motion 71. This is an affordable housing strategy, not what C-31 offers, an affordable housing Band-Aid. This is an affordable housing strategy that targets the real causes of the enormous escalation of pricing in getting a roof over your head in this country. The motion starts by recognizing that it is a fundamental human right, recognized under our Canadian National Housing Strategy, and I also under international human rights law, to have housing, and that housing must be adequate to people's needs. Now, the honourable member for Kitchener Centre, in his motion M71, identifies correctly the problem with housing and why the prices have escalated was we stopped having the price of a home. Again, I say home, not investment. The price of a home has historically always been tied to what a community can afford. If you're living somewhere where everybody's income is roughly the same, and that tends to happen across Canada, nobody's going to start charging $2 million for a community where the average income is $70,000 a year. You're just not going to start trying to sell a house there because you'd have no buyers. But when homes became disconnected and unrooted from place, when homes became a free-floating investment open to any speculator from anywhere, that disconnection, that commodification of the home into investment territory is when we started seeing massive escalation of pricing. Vancouver was ground zero for this, tied to money laundering, tied to crime, tied to all manner of nefarious activity, but it's spread. And we have targeted, and the member for Kitchener Centre in motion 71 targeted specifically real estate investment trusts. These REITs create investment opportunities, and they are not taxed appropriately. We need to actually ensure that REITs are no longer exempt from paying corporate income taxes. There is much more that we need to do with housing in making sure that it becomes more affordable. The current Liberal government and the budget that was tabled this spring takes some baby steps in looking at non-resident ownership. But there are other areas that we have not yet addressed, and I urge the government to look at the impact on available housing stock of the popularity of Airbnbs. Airbnbs create a tremendous opportunity for investors to buy multiple residential properties. And unlike the tourism industry, unlike the hotels and bed and breakfasts that have over decades had to pay for their insurance, train their employees, keep their employees with good wages. Right now, all of those regulated industries in tourism are being undercut by Airbnbs. They sound like they must be just the most lovely things in the world. It's as if you're playing in The Holiday with Kate Winslet, and you're just going back and forth to someone's home. This is not. This is a big business, and it is taking a lot of housing out of market availability for young families that want to buy a home, for people who want to rent a room in someone else's house while they come to do seasonal work in the Gulf Islands. Those properties are disappearing in Airbnbs, and we really do need to tackle that. I commend the government for bringing forward C-31, but I do not think it is preparing us for the economic storms that are likely to come. We have a number of warnings globally of a coming recession. We need to do much more. We need to tax the excess profits of those who are making a fortune while others suffer, particularly big oil. get that $8 billion and redistribute it to Canadians who need it the most. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Bay de Quinte.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member from Saanich Gulf Islands for her speech. I really like the phrase debt or bed to bureaucrat ratio, but what I really want to ask her is something I think it's important. It's the debt to bureaucrat ratio. So both the current Bank of Canada Governor, Tiff Macklem, and the former Bank of Canada Governor, David Dodge, have both stated this week that inflation in Canada is a made-in-Canada problem. It's the fact that we have more money chasing lack goods. At the same time, I spoke before that since 2015, the government has hired 61,000 federal employees. It's really bloated itself. We're looking, obviously, at motions. We want to help everyone, but like you so eloquently stated, we have to do the basics, healthcare and housing. Can you please just let me know, do you agree that we have a debt to bureaucrat problem also in government, and we need to address that to solve inflation as much as anything else?
Je rappelle à l'honorable collègue qui...
I'd like to remind the honourable colleague that he must address his questions to the Speaker. And now, the member for Saanich Gulf Islands. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks to my colleague from Bay de Quinte.
Current information that we have from the Parliamentary Budget Office suggests that our debt to GDP ratio is not disturbing to the Parliamentary Budget Office. Now, I don't think we have adequately, it's interesting to know the statistic that he shared of 61,000 bureaucrats hired, because I look at Environment Canada, where when there was a 10% budget cut in 2012 in Parks Canada, that has, those people have not been replaced. Some have been replaced in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, but I look at departments where we're not keeping up with this work, particularly in science-based departments. I do want to express the concern that most of what we see in terms of inflationary trends has been generated externally. Most has been the spike in fossil fuel prices caused by Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. There are many elements to our current economic distress, and I don't think government debt drives most of it.
Questions et commentaires, l'honorable...
Questions and comments. The honourable...
I'd like to
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
colleague for her intervention. And previous today, when we were debating C-31, we discussed a little bit about dental care, and I know the question about this being a first step. I'd like to know if she'd like to elaborate on what her thoughts would be in terms of a next step that we could look at in terms of dental care for all Canadians. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Saanich.
The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Mr. Speaker, I think it I would like to see amendments to the Canada Health Act to make it really clear that we understand that mental health is public health. Dental care is public health. And that we look at the totality of what the World Health Organization definition of health has always been, a complete state of physical, mental, they even use the term spiritual health. We don't take care of Canadians, and I think if we're looking for a gap in our healthcare system, I think the opioid crisis and the mental health crisis point us in that direction, as much as I think it's important to take care of dental care. I think the steps that would be required to get to full dental care require really engaging with the dentistry professional community and with provinces to determine how we move forward to ensure that no Canadian, regardless of their age, lacks adequate dental care.
Questions et commentaires, l'honorable député.
Questions and comments, the honourable member for Saint Jean. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Saanich Gulf Islands for her speech. I heard her mention that even if the dental care program isn't perfect, it's better to send money to people than nothing at all. And with a great deal of respect, I don't agree. In the program, a family that has insurance would be excluded from receiving money, even if insurance doesn't cover everything. And a family that pays just a little bit receives the whole amount. Wouldn't it be more effective to transfer the money to the provinces who could better meet the needs in the area of dental care and to better use the money rather than using it this way by the federal government? The honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands in 40 seconds. Thank you. And thank you to my dear colleague from Saint Jean for her question. I totally agree that there's an important role for the provinces, but unfortunately, I don't agree with the idea that it's only a decision to be made by the provinces. We must participate and we must collaborate at all levels of government in Canada, Indigenous governments, provincial and territorial and federal governments, and we must require that the healthcare system, the public healthcare system, be adequate for everybody's needs, for all needs. And if each province is able to decide, I fear for some people.
Reprise du débat.
Resuming debate, the honourable member.